The Denver offense has been so dismal here in the last few weeks. The last 19 drives, they have not scored a touchdown. How can they fix it here today?
They'll play, I think, the same way they always play, Jim. They're looking to make a big play in the passing game. That can be the difference in today's game.
In the pocket, sets, throws a deep ball now. He wants Thomas. Thomas is there and makes the catch. He wants Royal in the back of the end zone. Eddie's there. Eddie makes the catch. Touchdown, Denver. Tebow under center. He turns, play fakes in the pocket. Deep ball left side. He wants Thomas again. Demaryius has got it. Second big play by the second-year wide receiver out of Georgia Tech. This one goes for a gain of 57.
Unbelievable.
Design quarterback, keep right guard. Tebow's inside the 5. Tim Tebow has a Bronco touchdown. And the Broncos' second touchdown of this first half has increased their lead to 13-6.
Hey, DT, that's how you scramble drill, man. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Good ball, man.
Snap to Roethlisberger. 5-man rush. Ben is going to be hit by Robert Ayers and sacked, and we're heading into overtime.
We're starting a new game. Your choice.
Tails.
Call tails. It is heads.
Denver's football, first snap of overtime here, tied at 23. Line of scrimmage, the Bronco 20. Shotgun for Tim Tebow. Tim play fakes in the pocket, sets, throws. Pass caught. Demaryius Thomas out over the 45 midfield. Here we go. 40, 35, foot race, 20, 15, 10. Touchdown! Denver is over! It's over in Denver! DT inside the 15, breaks the tackle inside the 10. What a drive! DT's got it. Touchdown, Denver. Thomas is there. Touchdown, Demaryius Thomas.
On December 9th, 2021, came the stunning news. Legendary Broncos wide receiver Demaryius Thomas had passed away. He was 33. As we mourned, we began to learn more about the legacy DT left behind, one of hard work and grit on the field and love off of it. From people he spoke to every day to people he met only in passing, DT had an extraordinary impact. He had the ability to connect with people from all walks of life. His laugh was contagious, his smile unforgettable. Demaryius Antoine Thomas was born Christmas Day 1987 in Montrose, Georgia, a gift to everyone. He faced adversity as a child and found his path through sports. Along the way, DT never forgot where he came from, followed his heart, and made everyone feel like they had a special place in his. Demaryius Thomas, the heart of a legend.
Well, Demaryius came from Lawrence County, this small rural area, country town, if you would, cows, chickens, hogs, tractors, but he lived out in the country in Montrose, Georgia.
He was all about, where he came from and, his upbringing and the things that he went through as a kid that really, molded him into who he is today.
I met him at Dudley Gym, small rural country gym. He was probably 9 or 10 at that point. He would be shooting on one end of the court. And as I walk in the gym, I was a very competitive guy. And I yelled down there, "Hey kid, you gotta get off the floor." He was on the far end and he smiled at me. A lot of kids would have said, who are you supposed to be? But he just smiled. And even when I went to check, make sure everything was locked, and he was standing there with that ball, and I can still see him today. He's leaning against that car and he would just smile at me as I would go by. And I even told my brother, I was like, man, I don't know what's wrong with that kid. All he does is smile at me.
His smile lit up a room. And he put people at ease.
He came from a tough background, and he still was just always positive, always.
Beyond football, beyond anything athletic, he was just a great person.
The aura that he carried was like he was just blessed and happy to be doing what he was doing.
There was this one day where the guys that I played with were on a shift, As they called me on my cell phone, they was like, hey, we're going to be a little bit late. Demaryius is sitting on the bleacher, and he's got that ball throwing it up, and he's looking at every word I'm saying. So I go over to DT, and I say, all right, we only got 9 players. I said, you're going to play, but you're going to be on my team. And I said, the first play is going to be a pick and roll, and I'm going to set the pick. So I go up personally, and I set the pick on him, thinking he's going to mess up, throw the ball away, or shoot a jump shot or something like that. And he comes off the pick and roll, 2 dribbles. And as I set the pick and roll, he throws the ball, and the ball hits my left hand, 9 to 10 years old. As I lay it up, I'm thinking to myself, don't look. And of course, as I went back looking that way, you had that Demaryius Thomas smile. A 9-year-old kid that wanted to be part of a basketball game. It was 1 pick and roll, 1 pass, and our relationship started from there. And it is the best thing that's ever happened in my life.
He was 11 years old, and his mother is taken away from him, locked up on drug charges. His grandmother's gone, locked up on drug charges. And Demaryius went to live with his aunt and uncle. His uncle was a pastor. And as you would expect, there were a lot of rules in that household. I
came in one day and I said, where's your mother and grandmother? And he got real quiet. You know, I looked at him different that day. I think what happened in his life is what made him.
At a young age, having to, you know, kind of take over and be, you know, the man in the house. And it can shape you in one or two ways. You know, it can either break you or it can, you know, turn you to, you know, the strong man that, you know, we saw in DT.
DT was the greatest example of somebody who persevered through the toughest times. And, you know, I was proud of him. When I heard his story, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I can only imagine how I would deal with that. I mean, I couldn't give myself enough credit to get through something like that. I think one thing that was always instilled in him from early on is you work through those issues, you work through those problems, and you find a way to come out on top, and he did that.
People that have been through that kind of abandonment and trauma kind of stick together, and him and I, you know, we just like would have these long conversations about, you know, life, you know, about what we'd been through. And he didn't think, why me? He thought, okay, how do I get through it? Not just get through it, how do I thrive through the day?
Demaryius' childhood shaped him in a way that just made him resilient. He had to be mentally strong, mentally tough. But the thing about Demaryius was, even though he was those things, there was a softness to him. There was a sweetness about him.
The strongest people sometimes aren't the people that have both parents at home. The strongest people are the ones that really don't have any parents at home and realize that I really am on my own, and I have to do it on my own. I have to do it by myself, and we all should have that mindset. He learned how to provide for himself and do for himself and be for himself. But in the process of that, it was people that helped him when he really didn't have a mother and father, and he never forgot that. If you know him, he would literally take his shirt off his back and give it to you because so many people did it for him. And that right there, to me, is like the definition of his personality, if you really wanted to know. Like that's what really built him.
Us being from the same area, you know, you always hear about the guys that are really good in the area. And we was playing basketball, like I say, summer league. And I just remember he could do everything on the basketball court as well. You know, being that big and strong, he was playing the point guard. And then at that time, he'd already committed to Georgia Tech to play football. And in my head, I was saying, man, you know, he could go play basketball somewhere if he wanted to.
When I was young, I always told my mother I'd go pro in something. My favorite sports was basketball, so I was basically saying that, but never thought it'd be football. And I got in high school, started playing football. Became a decent receiver. I got better in college, and all of it paid off.
Demaryius Thomas was a standout three-sport student-athlete at West Lawrence High School, but it was his talent on the football field that caught the attention of college programs. DT wanted to stay close to home, close to his mother, and his basketball coach and mentor, Paul Williams. As fate would have it, Georgia Tech recruiter and future Broncos assistant coach Curtis Modkins was determined to make DT a Yellow Jacket.
Recruiting players in the state of Georgia, it's very competitive. The unique thing about Georgia Tech was that academically it's a very difficult school to get into and stay into, so we had to find kids that could handle that, which made him even more interesting because his background did not necessarily say he could survive at a place like Georgia Tech. That's what made him super unique, and that's what says a lot about who he was. We had had some success with big, fast receivers who could catch earlier with Calvin Johnson, so we kind of had a blueprint for it, and we thought he fit it. We had a visit in his home. It was actually, I think it was his coach's house, because he didn't really have a home. And he was kind of weighed down. I could tell he was kind of weighed down by the process. At that time, he had gotten to the point where these kids are trying to make a major decision. And we kind of found ourselves in the kitchen, just me and him. And he asked me, Coach, do you think I can really be the next Calvin Johnson? And I said, no, there's only one. But you can be Demaryius Thomas. And he looked at me and smiled, and that's what he needed to hear. He came in from a high school system, and we ran a pro-style system at Georgia Tech. And you could see pretty early that the talent was there. He just had to learn how to play receiver.
Wide open. That's a first down to Demaryius Thomas.
In 2007, Demaryius led Georgia Tech in receiving touchdowns, but his opportunities were about to dwindle. The following season, Chan Gailey and the coaching staff that recruited Demaryius were replaced, and new head coach Paul Johnson brought in a run-centric offense that limited DT's ability to show off his skill set.
If you want to know about Bebe, DT, then you should probably look no further than that process of us leaving and a new staff coming in. Probably didn't catch as many balls as he would have caught elsewhere, probably blocked a little bit more than he would have did elsewhere. And the fact that he stayed is what impressed me more than anything he did in the system. He didn't want things to be easy. He didn't come from easy, and he didn't expect anything else to be easy.
What a catch by Bebe!
That's the way I coached him. You don't make excuses, and you push through. You do what you got to do it. Georgia Tech, he was outstanding. I mean, if you go and watch, I'm sure you've watched highlights, he was a man among boys.
Thomas there, he made the catch!
You know pretty early if a guy has the ability to play at the next level. And it didn't surprise me that he turned out to be a first-round pick.
Even in a new offense, DT's talent was unmistakable. In the spring of 2010, Thomas arrived in Scottsdale, Arizona to prepare for the NFL draft. There, he began to form a friendship that eventually became a brotherhood with future Broncos teammate Eric Decker.
I was on the training table getting work done. He was out training with the rest of the guys. As time went on, he got injured during training and found himself next to me on the training table. And at that point, we just kind of connected and then really leaned on each other in terms of getting through that process. And it was a great surprise to see us go together to Denver and blossoming and developing that relationship. That was so important to both of us.
And with the 22nd pick in the 2010 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Demaryius Thomas, wide receiver, Georgia Tech.
This kid is a big physical wideout that runs in the 4.4 range. He broke his foot training for the combine. He's an unknown because of the offense he played, but he's a great character kid.
Of course, he's a receiver, he's in Denver. I want to know who this guy is, and I started studying a little bit about Demaryius Thomas, and I go online and I'm just looking at the plays that he's making over at Georgia Tech, and I'm like, okay, now I see why. But I've always under the impression, why would you draft somebody who was injured? Because in the NFL, if you're a first-round draft pick, you got to bring it out the gate.
My rookie year, I'd had an injury right away, and with him having his injury, just told him, hey man, believe in what you can accomplish. You know, an injury is almost a good thing to have early because you kind of get past it after that. There's nothing you can't overcome.
It was after he got drafted, was the first time I ever met him, and right away you just see how big he is.
They compared him to Calvin Johnson, but he's probably a little bit more muscular. He was fast, he could jump. He could do just about anything on the football field.
Even for today's football, DT was a big wide receiver. And so, you know, I could appreciate that being a bigger wide receiver myself. But, you know, the things that struck me in the early part of getting to know him was just how how quiet he was and how humble he always was.
What have the last 24 hours been like for you?
It's been tough. It's long, tiring, but it's fun. Happy to be a Denver Bronco.
He was just so quiet and kind of shy. The anti-first round wide receiver. You know, wide receivers are pretty loud and boisterous, and Demaryius just came in, went to work, put his nose down, and really ingratiated himself with his teammates.
We knew what type of talent he was. I saw him play. He played my Georgia Bulldogs every year he was there.
Quick throw, Demaryius Thomas uses the stiff arm. There he goes!
Him coming in, me understanding, who he was and where he came from, it gave us a quick connection, and I became that guy that he would look to for advice. He never fell short of questions, always yearning for more information. And that's always a big tell for a young athlete. That shows the level of passion and determination he had to be a great player.
When Demaryius Thomas arrived in Denver to begin his NFL career, the expectations were a mile high, but most of the attention went to fellow first-round pick Tim Tebow. While the media buzzed around the Heisman-winning quarterback, DT was rehabbing his surgically repaired left foot. In the process, he made a special connection with a local family and became a big brother figure to McKenna and Macy Gerke.
My papa was a very good chiropractor for the Broncos when he was with us, and at his office, he was constantly inviting players over for dinner. DT ended up being one of those players, and when my papa found out, all he was doing really was sitting in his hotel room watching movies, kind of waiting for the call until he gets signed for sure. So he was like, "You're living with us." And my Nona came home and saw suitcases, and she just was thinking, who's living in my house now? It's not just dinner this time that a player's here. But he was just immediately a big brother figure. He was so kind and caring, and he totally took my sister and I in. He was great with kids.
I was young. I was like 6 when I first met him, so I didn't really understand like celebrities, and I was just like, oh, those guys play sports on TV. And I was like, cool, like this is like a big brother, because I've like always wanted a big brother. So I was like, yes, like this is an opportunity. And he just showed up, and it didn't take long for him to just become a part of us.
On July 30th, 2010, Demaryius signed his 5-year rookie contract and moved in with teammate Eric Decker as their first training camp with the Broncos got underway.
Deciding to live together the first year and, really spend a lot of time together, kind of created that foundation to rely on each other for all things.
He came in with the mindset that he was going to be great, but he was humble great. Eric was very outgoing. DT was very reserved. So Eric kind of had to lead him around in the locker room, or especially in the training room. Had a fear factor in him because he didn't really know what to expect, especially coming off of the injury that he had at the time, which was a very serious injury.
We shared really a lot of that emotional roller coaster, getting better, getting on the field, finding our place. He had higher expectations than I did, being a first-round draft pick, but being able to lean on each other, going through something like that was huge. And then once we got healthy, it was a battle of who can catch more balls, who could have a better day at practice.
My battles in practice versus DT they were great. Early on, I was killing him. I loved playing against guys his size that didn't understand the game because they could never get off the jam, they couldn't get open properly or consistently. And he just kept fighting. He kept trying to figure out what I was doing, how he could beat me, and eventually he figured it out.
Very smart, always detail-oriented, would take a ton of notes. Some guys just rely on their athleticism and their God-gifted ability, not him. He also took it into the classroom and in the film room, and so that was another thing that was really impressive.
DT paid attention to every detail. He looked at everything in the playbook as an opportunity. And he actually, if you were in a meeting and he didn't think you were paying attention, he kind of hit you with some sunflower seeds. He just had a tremendous competitive spirit.
Demaryius Thomas made his Broncos debut against the Seahawks in the 2010 home opener and gave Broncos country a glimpse into the kind of player he was. 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown.
Orton floats one to Thomas in the end zone, and the rookie's got his first NFL touchdown.
But the 2010 season was difficult for both Thomas and the Broncos. Injuries forced him to miss half the season, and the 4-12 Broncos parted ways with head coach Josh McDaniels. DT's second season was filled with change, but DT was quick to adapt. John Fox replaced McDaniels as head coach in January of 2011. John Elway rejoined the franchise as the new general manager and vice president of football operations, and in Week 7, Tim Tebow was named the Broncos' starting quarterback, and that was the start of one of the most unforgettable seasons in franchise history.
Well, that's a book for itself, that season, 2011.
We were really good, and we were playing well every week, and the defense was really good. And I can remember our head coach, John Fox, saying, our quarterback, he can't do certain things, but he can sure run this stuff. It was not maybe typical, but we won, and we won, and we won.
I went to one of their meetings, and I'm watching them, and they're frustrated. They're completely frustrated. Tim Tebow's the quarterback. The offense is sputtering at best, and these guys are frustrated because they're not getting the football.
In the pocket, loads it up, home run ball. He's got Demaryius Thomas. Thomas has to go right through his hands at the 10-yard line.
It was a unique time, the Tim Tebow era, but just watching these two young guys kind of bond and kind of take this team to a level that they hadn't been at in a couple of years.
Good, my fault, man. Hey, no big deal. Just makes it closer for a little bit longer, man. You're about to go catch the game winner.
And one of the things I shared with them was I said, guys, here's the thing. This is the situation you have. Be an athlete. You're going to have to scramble. You're not going to probably get the ball on time. Scramble around. This is what this guy's good at. Adjust your game. Don't make him adjust to all you guys.
Tebow throws on the run, pass to a wide open Demaryius Thomas, inside the 20, DT inside the 15, breaks a tackle inside the 10, inside the 5, touchdown Denver!
That was really the year that he kind of put some things together, had a good run towards the end. I think that's what set him up for the long run.
How many games that we came back in the fourth quarter, Prater kicked a 60-yard plus field goal, and then Tebow found a way to win it at the end. It was pretty magical.
The season didn't end the way we wanted, of course, but I think they did give people a run for their money at the end.
The Broncos finished the 2011 regular season 8-8, which won the AFC West and got them a playoff game against the defending Steelers. Pittsburgh had the league's #1 defense. The Broncos were 8-point home underdogs.
I don't know that I'd ever seen a team that had a home playoff game come into the game as such an underdog. The Broncos just hung around in that game. They ran the ball enough, and Tim Tebow completed a few passes at critical times.
The only way we're even in the playoffs, I have to give Tim Tebow credit. His scrambling and things that he did that was completely off schedule. But I think it was a lot of the adjustments of the offensive players. The skill position had to adjust for his style, and that got him in the playoffs, got him with the Steelers in overtime, and we got the ball.
This will be the 4th overtime game of the season. Just in case you're wondering, the previous 3 have all been Bronco victories.
And overtime really has been Bronco time for this team.
Just given how the game had unfolded and how the Broncos offense had worked that year, that if they were forced to go 80 yards for a score, I just didn't think they could do it. And I remember my play call, there was surprise.
Tim play fakes in the pocket, sets, throws, pass, caught, Demaryius Thomas out over the 45 midfield, here we go, 40!
Tim Tebow threw him a slant, first play in overtime to take it the distance, and he ran away from Ike Taylor. Ike Taylor was one of the fastest cornerbacks in the league at that point.
It showed his athletic abilities in all in one play. The catch and then the run after the catch, him being so big and so fast, he outran the whole secondary.
I remember seeing John on the sideline, and John is excited, and of course the stands are crazy.
I wasn't even a Bronco yet. I was still in college. And I remember watching that and being like, man, that guy is incredible.
They had changed the overtime rules, so I kind of forgot about him. And I'm like, what are y'all doing, man? The game's not over. And they're like, no, the game is over. That was a walk-off home run.
The crowd has lost their mind. It is over.
It was something that no one expected. It's a play that speaks so much of how he is. A quick slant, just go make a do miss, and then go be DT.
It was a magical moment, and just, no better place, truthfully, than Denver to kind of experience that moment.
Given all the circumstances of that season, and then to have the game end on the first play of overtime. And I've seen a lot of Denver Broncos games. I think that easily would be a top 5 play.
Greatest play, it's singular. What is the one greatest play of his career? Well, it was a long play, it was a successful play, and you advanced in the playoffs because of it.
I feel like a legend was born that day because the whole country knew his name by the end and making that play.
Even though we didn't end up doing what we wanted to do, the next week we lost, but that was one of those moments, and he was a part of a big moment in this organization.
At around 2:30, my phone goes off, and so I go, hello, and he just says, did you see me? And I was like, of course, the whole world saw you.
That moment will forever be a part of Demaryius Thomas's legacy. It was just his second year in the NFL, but DT already achieved what some would have considered impossible. The following season brought a new opportunity, the chance to catch passes from future Hall of Fame quarterback Peyton Manning.
I called John Elway Monday morning and let him know that I wanted to be a Denver Bronco. I'm looking forward to meeting my new teammates and doing everything I can to help this franchise win another Super Bowl.
When Peyton got here, I think everything changed for the receivers and obviously for DT. I mean, that was like just a shot of adrenaline.
What do you think of these wide receivers in particular, Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker?
Well, they're young and talented. You can tell when you watch these guys on tape that they love football. They're excited about it, and so that's what's always rewarding for me is getting on the same page with these receivers in the offseason and seeing that come together on the playing field. So these guys are going to have to help me as well. I'll lean on them, and I'm the new guy here.
He's like, I've never really played with a real quarterback. I was at Georgia Tech in a wing T offense that was run first. And then I was with Tim Tebow at the start of my career. I think I'm really going to be able to do something.
We had Peyton Manning, we had DT, we had Eric Decker. It was we were flooded all over the place, and DT was a huge part of that.
When Peyton Manning arrived, for one, everybody's excited. A lot of people are thinking Peyton Manning's on his last leg, and Peyton Manning, of course, the 4 years he was here, that stretch of football at the quarterback position in the league was top notch.
I told him and Eric Decker, I said, hey, it's going to be a tough year. You're going to have to do things and work harder than you've ever had to work, but the benefits will be there. It'll pay off if you just do it. And both of those guys did it, and Demaryius, had such a great run there with Peyton.
With the Peyton Manning era underway, Demaryius quickly adjusted to his new quarterback.
I was nervous at the time. I ain't even gonna tell no story. I was nervous. I'm like, man, I'm about to get a chance to play with Peyton. A lot of guys don't get that. I don't care what they say, with the injury or not. It just was learning the game and being around it.
7 weeks into the 2012 season, DT had already matched his 2011 totals with 679 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. And that was just the beginning.
Demaryius Thomas, once again, has beaten the Steelers on a huge play, 71 yards.
His first 2 seasons, he was kind of quiet, but then once Peyton Manning came along, as it tends to happen for wide receivers, things just took off for Demaryius.
Manning in the gun, fakes to Willis McGahee, he steps up, throws, he wants Thomas. Thomas is there, touchdown Denver.
He exploded, and he knew this. He just knew he had that ability. He was just waiting to play with a quarterback that could kind of unleash it.
It was just a fun group. We had a fun group. Demaryius, Eric Decker, they came in together, being able to get back together with those guys kind of in the prime of their career. We just had a lot of fun.
Manning facing a 4-man rush, sets in the pocket, looks to the end zone, floats into the end zone. Thomas with the one-handed catch, touchdown Denver, the catch of the year by Demaryius Thomas.
Back in the end zone against Kansas City, the one hand, stuff like that. Like, he jump out of the gym. He's one of those guys we say could jump out of the gym. I guarantee you put a basketball in his hand, he could throw it down one hand, 2 hand, however you want him to do it. But he was just happened to be a football player.
We had a little competition thing that we did. He always said that I kind of taught him the toe tap. So you catch it and you just tap your back toe comes down and taps it right when you catch the ball. It's Atlanta Falcons game on the road. It was in the corner of the end zone.
Same formation, Stokely inside of Thomas, slot left, Decker slot right, shotgun snap to Peyton. Bounces around, looks left, throws left. He's got Thomas in the end zone. Did he get 2 feet down? Nope. Oh, ruled out of bounds.
And so I was watching him catch that ball, and I saw the toe tap right when he caught it, and the ref called it incomplete. And I'm like, no, he caught this ball, challenge it.
The ruling on the field has been reversed to a touchdown, Denver.
You know, he always says that I taught him the toe tap, and so that was a memorable one for me.
DT was our #1 guy. I mean, it was really, no question who the main target was for Peyton that year.
For Demaryius and the guys that he was playing with then, it was special for them because they get to play with an elite pocket quarterback.
Wide receivers love great quarterbacks, and I think that, with Peyton coming in and where we were at quarterback at that point in time, didn't have anybody with near Peyton's caliber. And even though Peyton was coming off injury, we felt great about the fact that he was going to come back and play like he did.
For a receiver, when you know where the quarterback's going to be, you know the angle of where the ball's going to come from, it really changes your whole game, how you arrive at your spot. And that made him be a little bit more creative in his route running.
That's what I'm talking about, all right? Let's go. Let's quit waiting to the 3rd series, right? Let's go. Sense of urgency from here on out, right? Let's go. Keep making plays. Let's go.
He was always ready and did whatever I think Manning asked of him and that much more because he wanted to be so much better, I think, for Manning.
We worked hard, but we had fun. It was such a good group of guys, and Demaryius, was at the top of that list.
I remember a Tampa Bay game. I was in the slot. I called an audible to him to change the play because I read the defense, because I learned it from him. It was cover 2. I was supposed to have a corner. I said, I can't run a corner route into cover 2. I alerted. I gave him a post route. He gave me the nod, and we threw a touchdown.
Peyton looks left, fires left. He's got Demaryius Thomas in the end zone for another Denver touchdown.
I've never done that with a quarterback. I never saw a receiver done that with a quarterback. And if you know the game, you know when it's time to alert. That's why I love playing with him.
DT was 6'3", 225 pounds, and Peyton Manning's style allowed Thomas to use his size and his speed. In 2012, Demaryius led the team with 94 catches and 1,434 receiving yards. It would be the first of 5 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons and his first of 4 Pro Bowls.
He had great size, and he had great speed, and he had a great feel for running routes and could get open. I always say, guys look good as wide receivers that can run fast and they're big, but they can't get open. And he had the combination of all 3, plus he could catch the ball and did a great job after he caught the ball.
Home run ball, left side, perfectly thrown pass. Demaryius Thomas has a Denver touchdown.
It wasn't another receiver that had all 3. You had big guys, but they weren't that fast. You had strong guys, but they weren't that quick. DT was everything.
Left throws to DT, touchdown Denver.
His physique, his physical stature was just crazy for how fast and quick he could move. And, covering and going up against him, I'm like, man, there's no way a guy this size should be able to move that well.
His mechanics were so smooth that it just he would just float. And to be that big and be able to float the way he did was just incredible. He would catch the ball and separate.
The largest, fastest man I think I've ever seen. He was a gazelle is what I called him, the way he would run.
The DT screen is kind of what it's known now, and threw him the little quick screen out to the left, and there he goes, and he's just so explosive. He can go 0 to 10 so fast.
Quick throw right side. Demaryius Thomas has it. Skips out of a tackle. The big wide receiver heads towards the west sideline. Pushed away from one Raider defender and is tumbled out of bounds at the 39-yard line.
Those plays aren't very common with a lot of receivers. When he did them, you're like, oh, there he goes, here goes DT again.
He demanded respect on the field. He's a guy who gave you everything that he could give you when he stepped between the lines. You love to see that presence that he had when he was on the field.
Big play, Demaryius Thomas, a gain of 41 yards.
Going up against him, it was always the small details, the subtle things that made him kind of stand out. The route running, the blocking. Yeah, he was definitely a matchup problem for sure.
In his prime, Demaryius Thomas was unstoppable. You saw so much success after the catch. You saw so much success in short routage.
It wasn't just make a catch and get down. It was make the catch and score. He wanted to score a touchdown. When he got the ball in his hands, he wanted to score.
He took some big shots, and he was not afraid to go across that middle. A lot of respect as an offensive lineman seeing a guy that could take those kind of shots and just bounce back up, and he went back to work.
He was fearless, and he just was relentless in his effort, and he made it look easy. I loved watching him play because he would catch things that you didn't think that he'd be able to catch, and he would do it just really kind of flawlessly.
I remember talking to Peyton about him, and Peyton was just saying his ceiling is so high that he's just going to get better and better, and that's what he did.
After an earlier than expected exit from the 2012 playoffs, Demaryius Thomas and the Broncos were ready to take another step forward, and it was clear from the first game of the season that the Peyton Manning-led offense was destined to be one of the greatest of all time.
We are set for the kickoff opener in the 2013 NFL season.
I just remember being on the sideline when Peyton threw 7 touchdowns against the Ravens. That was sick.
The screen route when he played the Ravens in 2013 was huge. I think that was the first game of the season, and he took that the distance.
DT has a screen pass, and he's off to the races. DT at midfield, and he is long gone. 30, 25, 20. 15, 10, 5, he walks into the end zone. Manning's 7th touchdown pass.
I remember that play just as saying to myself, man, that is a big dude that can really run.
Anytime DT had the ball in his hands, he was able to extend the play. He could take it 20 yards, 60 yards, go score. DT was a huge threat in 2013.
Quick throw left side. Demaryius Thomas gets a block from Chris Clark inside the 10. Gets a block from Welker inside the 5. He's got a Denver touchdown. And the Broncos, with 5:10 to go in the third, have broken this one open 34-13.
When you had to come up with a plan on defense to try to figure out, okay, how are we going to play 88? I think he was one of the more difficult receivers in the league to do that.
You had to put so much attention on Demaryius Thomas. It allowed people within this offense, Julius Thomas, all these other guys, to go out and just have one-on-one matchups all the time. He always knew if he was on the field, he'd draw extra attention.
Come on, fellas. Got to put some points on the board. Got to put some points on the board. Overcome. Let's go now.
Having the group learning together as a whole and one, thinking like one, that's when the best came out of all of us.
And this machine rolls on and seems to get better by the week.
I'll tell you, for Denver, big-time driver's seat now for the division, sweeping the series over Kansas City.
Adam Gase, our offensive coordinator, had written on the grease board of his office the record for points scored in a season. And he said, we will beat that. And every week we scored points, and eventually we did. We set the new pro football record for points scored in a season.
4-man rush again. Peyton bounces around, throws a deep ball. He wants Demaryius Thomas is there. DT's got it in foot race. 15, 10, 5, touchdown Denver. And there's the touchdown that breaks the all-time record for the most points in a single season in NFL history. 63 yards, Manning to Demaryius Thomas.
From DT's perspective, he was as productive and electrifying as any wide receiver in the game.
They playing a little outside leverage when we got them fades. Yeah, that was a tough one.
I just remember DT always being a competitor. He wasn't going to trash talk you. He just show up quietly and just really just beat your ass.
Quick throw, right side. He wants Demaryius Thomas. Thomas with the catch, and Denver has a touchdown.
The numbers they put up and the fashion that they did, it was just spectacular.
Demaryius had a great year. Peyton Manning had a great year. And sometimes the word great is overused, but not in this case.
Thomas is there, and Denver's got a touchdown.
Good job. Nice route. Bring it out.
Denver's offense gained recognition around the world. And while DT now had superstar stats, he never acted like one. Demaryius stayed true to his roots and let his humble persona guide him, even when the Broncos fell short of their ultimate goal.
Dominating performance by the Seattle Seahawks as they have dismantled the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 48.
People don't really remember, in that game against Seattle in the Super Bowl where the Broncos lost, he set a Super Bowl record for catches.
Super Bowl 48, DT was the only thing that kept me engaged in that game. He had a monster game. It was 118 yards, 13 receptions. He had the only touchdown of that game.
Empty backfield for Manning. Shotgun snap, three-man rush. Peyton throws to the end zone. Demaryius Thomas is there, makes the catch, touchdown Denver. The Broncos in the third quarter finally scores 36-6 Seattle.
The guy did everything he could to help us win. Defensively, we just didn't show up. He was so hung up on the one mistake he made, fumbling the football. And DT felt like he personally let us down. That just says a lot about his character because he's such an accountable individual. I think we all were down, but I didn't want him to ever feel like it was his fault.
Demaryius was a guy that was very reserved in terms of, showing his emotions, speaking about his emotions. He always had that big smile to cover it up. But he's human like all of us.
The greatest way I saw him grow was how he handled fame. He didn't grab the spotlight and say, look at me. Other people put the spotlight on him, and you know what he was doing? He had his head down, he was working.
There's so much money and there's so much notoriety. You can sort of lose yourself in that. He wasn't one of those guys.
You see what happens to these guys. They get a God complex. They get a big head. He never got a big head. He never lost his humbleness. He's always a humble guy.
I think him being humble was definitely an advantage.
Went to work, showed up, big smile, didn't complain.
That's just the type of guy DT was. He made simple and humble look so cool.
I never tried to say I was the best at something, but I was always the one to try to prove I was the best at something. I never grew up to disrespect, but I was never scared of nothing. Never scared to work towards being the best.
What I loved is he didn't care if he had 5, 7 touchdowns. And by that time, I'd been in the huddle with some other prominent wide receivers in the NFL, and they'd let the offense know, hey, I'm not getting any balls. Hey, throw me the ball. Hey, I'm open. DT never complained in the huddle.
When you're a guy that has that type of status on a team, you get put under a spotlight way more in everything that you do. And so for me to see a guy like DT running down the field, being the first one to celebrate, blocking as hard as he can, and taking some pride in that to me was like some of my favorite plays that I think I've ever seen.
In 2013, my last season, I got to leave the team in great hands. You got a leader like Peyton, and then you got an emerging star like DT. It was a great year. And, I was looking forward to see how he doubled that up with the next year and the next year, and he was able to do it and put together a great 10-year run.
After a disappointing end to the 2013 season, General Manager John Elway shifted his focus to the defensive side of the ball, adding stars in free agency and the draft. Elway also made an underrated addition to the offense, signing wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders.
Let's have a day, fellas. Let's have a day. Let's be great.
He welcomed me the Demaryius Thomas way. Quiet, reserved, kind of just peeping how I was. He's not the one that's gonna walk up to you and just straight talk to you, but he's gonna watch. And he's quiet now, but he's not quiet once you really get to know him. So he was just watching me, seeing who I was.
Sanders and Thomas became one of the most productive 1-2 punches the league had ever seen. Just the third duo ever to reach 3,000 receiving yards in a season.
Having those two on the field together was so much fun to watch. It was just like you couldn't take your eyes off the Jumbotron. Because you're just like, what are they going to do? Something's going to happen, One of those two guys are going to make a big play.
So Emmanuel Sanders and DT having 3,000 yards in one season is nuts. The football's flying around, and you're making plays. Because you're not going to get 12 targets a game. The way the game is, defenses are too good. But you're going to get 6 or 7. And that means those guys were making big plays, and they were making at least 1 to 2 big plays a game. That's what makes it special. To have 3,000 yards from 2 guys, that is amazing.
Manning under center, play fakes, Manning to the end zone, DT wide open, touchdown Denver. Perfectly thrown pass, Demaryius Thomas wide open in the back of the end zone after the play fake.
There were times when I would recap the game and look at some of these numbers, and it's like, This is like playing Madden football. This is not, these guys are doing this in the NFL against the best players in the world. So I was just amazed at really what they were able to accomplish.
I just think they vibe so well in the classroom that made the football field easier.
I remember I was talking to the media and I said, let me tell you something. Demaryius is Batman, but I'm gonna be the best Robin he ever had. And I stuck to that, and I believed in that.
In Week 5, a dominant performance cemented DT's legacy.
If I could think of any Broncos game of Demaryius, it had to be the Arizona Cardinals. 2014, he broke the Broncos single game record for yardage, and he was just wreaking havoc that day. Unstoppable.
It was special to watch him break that record because I wanted that record. That was one of the ones I didn't have. And then DT comes along with 226, which is insane.
1st and 10 Denver from the 32. Quick throw right side, Thomas. Demaryius Thomas catches it and then stops at the 45-yard line after a 13-yard gain, so the numbers continue to get tacked on. DT now 8 catches, 226 yards. Demaryius Thomas sets a Denver Bronco record for most receiving yards in a regular season game.
He was like electrifying. I mean, our name was Thunder and Lightning, but he could have been Thunder and Lightning, really.
That's how he played. He would always get a big play in every game. It would be a fade, it would be a go route, it would be a post. Catch him in cover 2, he'd get behind him, and he was real systematic. He didn't need 12 and 14 catches to do it, because when he got that ball, and like I said, he's so big, strong, and fast that he was going to move the chains every time he touched the football.
The Broncos would continue to rewrite the record books in 2014. In Week 7, Peyton Manning connected with Emmanuel Sanders and Wes Welker for career touchdown passes 507 and 508. When it came time for Manning to throw number 509 and eclipse Brett Favre's NFL record, DT was the man for the job.
Empty backfield, 3-man rush. He bounces around, he throws. DT is there. Are they going to say touchdown? Touchdown, Demaryius Thomas. Move over Brett Favre and make room for the new king. Peyton Manning now has more touchdown passes than any other player in NFL history.
Peyton had came up with a game where we keep the ball away from him once we scored a touchdown. That's what we did kind of to make it kind of cool, but it was a special play, and I was so happy to be a part of it and be the one to catch it.
DT was everything as far as our offense. It was fun to design plays for him because you just knew the defense couldn't do anything about it. He was a defensive players or defensive coordinators' worst nightmare, but for me, as a quarterback and our team, boy, he was just a gift.
We literally set out for him to be the most dominant receiver here. And like I told him, I said, you know what, somebody had the records before I got them. And I set the bar as high as I could, but here's the thing, if you hit him, you're one of the best in the league.
4-man rush, Peyton plenty of time, fires one left side, deflected and caught by Thomas. Demaryius Thomas scampers out of bounds right at the 40-yard line. He now is the all-time, by the way, with that catch and run, all-time franchise leader in yards in a single season as Demaryius Thomas surpasses Rod Smith with that catch.
If he'd had another year, everything I ever did, he'd have shattered it.
Rod Smith is saying that? That's the ultimate compliment, and I believe it. I think it's true. I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
Demaryius and Rod, they're 1A and 1B, no matter how you want to look at it. Going down in the record books as the greatest wide receivers in Broncos history.
While preparation for game day took up most of his time, Thomas never passed up a chance to serve the community, though he was never a fan of the spotlight. DT may have had his greatest impact when he made unannounced visits to the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club.
DT poured into the community. He was always at the Boys and Girls Club.
He lit up like a Christmas tree when he had an opportunity to work with children.
I think he just loved being part of the community. I think he looked at himself as just a regular guy.
Demaryius was not one to act like, hey, look at me, look at me. He was very much quiet, soft-spoken, but ask kids what they have going on.
He cared about, everybody, especially, small children, and, he was an incredible guy.
I think when you have good energy, you can connect with anybody, but especially a child, right? They want that good energy. I mean, and being on the level he was, I mean, he would go out of his way for anybody. And, you know, he's always joyful to be around. What kid wouldn't want to be around DT?
When I was with him and you do stuff at the Boys and Girls Club, the same look and smile he had on his face with the kids was the same look and smile he had on his face during the games. After going back and seeing more of, knowing more about his life, like what he's overcome to get to this point, I can see why he would cherish every moment.
Well, we did this toy drive during Christmas where we take about 10 to 15 kids and do a little shopping spree at Target. And I remember him just, you know, probably wrapping up about 5 or 6 of them and taking them to go shopping. And these kids just wanted to shop with him because he's like, yeah, we'll get a little extra. What is it, $100? Oh, we'll take care of you. You know, he just loaded up his cars and the kids were like, oh, I love this guy. And I remember that moment, just like, you know, he was obviously in his element, present, enjoying the time. And these kids were just like, this is the best thing ever. And I think that's, you know, what radiates about him is just, again, that giving attitude, that big heart that he shared with everybody.
Have you been naughty or good? Santa will find out.
He understood a lot of the struggles that the kids go through. A lot of single parent families, a lot of kids that are carrying a burden. And I think he could really relate with many of those kids. He saw himself in many of these kids and the struggles. He would even have conversation about those struggles and let them know, hey, you can do better. You can be exceptional.
And I think for those kids, him letting them know that they're not alone and just kind of sharing his experience and the things he's went through as a kid, just kind of encourage them and let them know that, you know, they can make it through anything.
Who's having more fun out here, you or the kids? Probably me. Okay. I don't know. There's a lot of kids having fun too. They got a lot of energy today. I think it's because of their last day, and I don't think they want them to be their last day.
DT's legacy among this franchise and its fans is one of greatness, and one that he's earned on and off the field.
I'm older than him. He's 20. I'm 30.
You're 30?
Yes.
I thought you were like 20.
I'm 30.
A lot of the way I carry myself as an NFL football player was learned from him.
Manning gets the snap off here, throws the outcut for Demaryius Thomas, who is there, catches it, runs inside the 30, the 25, didn't get out of bounds, and this will be the final play of the game. And the Indianapolis Colts have come to the Sports Authority Field at Mile High and have shocked the Denver Broncos, and it will be Indianapolis traveling to Foxborough next Sunday instead of the Broncos.
In 2015, the Broncos turned to Gary Kubiak. The high-flying offensive attack of the previous seasons shifted to a more conservative approach. DT maintained his role as the team's #1 receiving threat, but he also channeled the work he did at Georgia Tech and became a vital downfield blocker for the Broncos' rushing attack.
2015, that was a fun year. Like the way that we were able to bond on the field, and it was a few times, you know, when I look back, like we were down games, and here goes DT, like, hey, let's get everybody together, and all of a sudden, like, we just started making these explosive plays. DT will make a big play, I'll make a big play.
Throws one, he's got a touchdown! Touchdown Denver, Emmanuel Sanders, and with 36 seconds to go, the Broncos are within 1.
When things are like kind of chaotic, he's going to be that guy that's the same guy every day, no matter what. He's not going to change. He's not going to be a different guy. He's not going to be being aggressive and trying to fight with people and doing this and doing that. Like, he's going to be the same consistent guy every day.
Obviously, being our top offensive threat, him and Emmanuel, what a duo we had, and throughout the whole year, you know, somebody you can lean on to make a big play at the right time.
He was all about making plays, doing his job, and doing his job for his teammates.
I love the touchdown he had when we were at Detroit, mainly because it was right towards the second half, and I remember getting in the huddle. I can't remember how much time was left. I think there was less than a minute or around a minute, and I was thinking we're probably kneeling the ball, a couple run plays, and Peyton comes in and calls a couple plays back-to-back, and I thought, oh, we're going to go score a touchdown here.
Denver evidently will go for it here, 4th down and a foot. Fowler is wide left, Daniels attached left. You've got Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas inside out in the slot right. They bring 6. Manning throws deep route. He's got Demaryius Thomas there. Thomas goes up, makes the catch, keeps his balance, backpedals rattles into the end zone. Touchdown, Denver. A play of 45 yards. What a throw and catch.
He just went over the top of the guy, stayed in bounds, and scored. He was just so strong and just so powerful on the football field.
And it was kind of this moment where we were all screaming and yelling, coming running towards him. And it was such a celebration of our grit and tenacity and want to as a team, and how much he can help us finish a drive like that and go into halftime with a lead.
It's just so many times where you'd look up and there's 88 with the ball in his hand, and he's going to score. He's trying to score.
Tight trips left. Osweiler a deep drop from under center. Steps up to avoid pressure. Wide open is Demaryius Thomas in the middle of the field. He's got it. The big receiver loose. Stiff arms himself free down the sideline. Thomas racing for the pylon, and Demaryius Thomas has a Denver touchdown.
I remember the Cincinnati game. DT made like a one-handed catch.
Shotgun snap. Osweiler looks. He throws. Pass caught. One-handed by Demaryius Thomas. The catch of the night. Oh my goodness.
First play of the Chargers game, he takes it 80 yards for a touchdown.
Ball caught by Demaryius Thomas. He breaks the tackle. He's down the sideline. The big receiver still on his feet. Cuts up inside of the 30. Foot races to 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Denver.
Just he had that ability at any time to take it 100 yards for a touchdown and really set the mood and tone for our team.
We ended up both having over 1,000 yards that year, and then we hit the playoffs and was still rolling.
We're going to keep battling our ass off. Congratulations to everybody. Everybody knows now we got a little break here, okay? We're the number 1 seed and we're at the house, right?
The Broncos finished the regular season as the top seed in the AFC. At the same time, off the field, a 15-year dream was finally coming true. President Obama commuted the prison sentences of dozens of nonviolent drug offenders. Demaryius' mother, Katina Smith, was one of them. On January 17, 2016, she was in Denver to watch her son play football in person for the first time.
I was so excited for them that she was going to get to see that playoff game, and this was the first time that she was ever going to see Demaryius play football. By this time, he is balling out like he is an all-pro wide receiver in the NFL, and his mother has never seen him play. She was excited for it. He was excited for it. I was just hoping I hope they win, and they did.
Knowing Peyton and what he thinks of Demaryius, I have no doubt that there will be a couple times in this game where Peyton says, here's one for your mom.
Yeah, you know what? He'll try to make sure Demaryius has a big day.
He always acted like my mother is watching me. What would my mom want me to do? And of course, it was a great joy when she eventually was released from prison and she got to see him play.
She was absolute in her decision not to take a plea deal. She wasn't really part of the drug operation. The authorities didn't really want her. They weren't going after her. They were going after her mother. And the deal was, flip on your mom, tell us everything you know, and you'll get 4 years. And she said, I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to have everyone in my family think that I turned on my mother and that I put our mother in this situation.
And I asked him if he was upset. There were so many years that he was without his mother and he didn't have her, and he just smiled that big, charismatic, beautiful, loving smile and said, no, I'm not upset. Why would I be upset? I'm just happy that we're here now,
He carried a very heavy burden. He had a lot of people that he was trying to take care of. And there was more to life than just football for Demaryius Thomas.
And, we all are a product of our environment. We're all a product of how we grew up and who we were around. And Demaryius is one of those guys that sometimes, the product of your environment, you beat down on yourself, and next thing you know, you're not where you're supposed to be. And then some people say, you know what, through this, a diamond is going to be created. Through these hard times, a diamond is going to create it, and he was that diamond.
Demaryius Thomas thrived under the most difficult circumstances you could ever imagine in the personal life. And the pain that he was probably carrying his entire career, and the anxiety. It's anxiety of not knowing, is your mom okay, and knowing where your family's going to be. I'm not sure that's something that the average fan truly understands, how much he was able to overcome and thrive through adversity that many of us
we would fold up and we would crawl into our bed and not want to come out. But not Demaryius. He came out and he thrived and he had a smile on his face and he served.
You know, one of my most vivid memories of the 2015 was beating the Patriots in the AFC Championship, because that's when none of the media bum rush and you were able to appreciate your teammates and understand that we're going to the Super Bowl, and we was there. And I remember telling DT, hey man, we got to get this picture. I was like, we have to play in the confetti. And like, he looked at me like, man, what? And the next thing you know, he's on the ground playing in the confetti with me, and that's one of my favorite pictures of all time. You see a kid who understood that I can do it on my own, and I'm gonna do it on my own. This kid goes on to go to the NFL. Barack Obama sees what this kid is about. The maturity of this kid, the professionalism of this kid, the greatness of this kid, not just on the football field, but off the football field. And ends up releasing his mother, right? Like, that right there is an American story within itself.
3rd and 9. Will Denver pressure here? They rush 4. In the pocket is Newton. He pumps. The ball's knocked out of his hands. It bounces around, and I think Denver's got it. Ball still is free. T.J. Ward's got the ball at the Carolina 5-yard line. Von Miller again. Denver's 4th turnover created by this defense, and they've got a 1st and goal at the Carolina 5.
DT! DT! DT, we need you! We need you!
Can you feel it, Dave?
I can feel it now.
Can you feel it?
3rd and goal. He's going to go up top, and he's going to throw it through the back of the end zone, but it generates a flag on the Carolina defense. Holding on to Demaryius Thomas.
1st and goal, handoff, C.J. Anderson, left guard into Kuechly. Second effort to the goal line. Touchdown, Denver!
Wow, the fans in this stadium are going absolutely nuts.
The Denver Broncos are world champions. They have just won Super Bowl 50. And the Lombardi Trophy is coming home to the Mile High City.
Congrats, man. I'm proud of you, man. Happy for you. Hey, you're the man. Appreciate you sticking with me, man. So, I'm proud of you, man. Okay. We'll have us a cold one later tonight.
The Broncos had climbed the mountain, taking home the Lombardi Trophy in 2015. DT had just 7 receptions for 60 yards during the 2015 postseason, but he was a crucial part of the game plan, allowing others to shine while opposing defenses focused on him.
Winning a title with DT, really that whole team, that was the closest team I'd ever been a part of. And it started with preseason dinners that we had, and DT actually spoke at one of the first ones we had as an offense. But we were just so close. We knew each other, we sacrificed for each other, we challenged each other.
Man, winning the Super Bowl, for sure, that was the ultimate goal of playing ball in there, for sure. Everybody that was on that team, I don't want to call names because I don't want to miss nobody, because it was a special time for all of us.
I was so happy for him because I knew what he had been through, from his injury his rookie year, to doubts and questions as to whether he would pan out as a first-round pick, to being the man, to being a Pro Bowler, but still not getting that championship, to have been his teammate and seen that progression and all the work he put in to be a champion. He earned every moment of it.
You always knew that he'd be there, whether it was the run game, whether it was the pass game, whether he was setting it up as a #1 wide receiver, or whether he was a decoy. He was always going to show up, be physical, play fast, and do his job.
You know, scored a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards, a lot of catches for the Broncos, and was an integral part for our Super Bowl 50 team.
Sharp and I used to tell him, you gotta get a ring. I said, all this stuff you're doing is great, but you gotta have that hardware that no one can ever take. And I remember we were so excited, so happy being at Super Bowl 50 on the field, celebrating with him, and with the team, of course, but just knowing now you put yourself, especially in Broncos world, you put yourself in a whole elite different category because you have that ring.
Just to see him be in that environment and finally have his full family there was incredible. Getting that ring after all that he went through, he matured so much. He was finally at peace with himself, his career, in his future.
I just remember being in a locker room. My dad and 2 brothers were in there,
I'm talking to them, and Marshall is in there with me, and I can't find him, and I'm almost going to get worried about him. And next thing you know, I see DT coming around the corner. He's got Marshall in the laundry bin, pushing him like a tractor around the locker room like he's in a parade. And my son's having the time of his life. It just tells you the kind of person DT was, that he cared about other people.
Peyton Manning announced his retirement in the spring of 2016, and for the next 2 seasons, Demaryius continued to lead the team in receptions and yards. DT never returned to the playoffs with the Broncos, but he continued to be a team-first player, guiding the next generation of young receivers.
Demaryius was like one of those guys that's gonna walk over and sit over and talk to all the guys, right? And he's gonna chat with all the guys. Like he was always accountable and there for all of us. And it was the same thing with the way that he suited up. Like he didn't want to let the guys down.
DT as a teammate was unbelievable. I remember one interaction I had as a rookie, middle of the season, you starting to have that I feel bad for myself mentality. And, we're in the cafeteria, he pulled me aside. He was just like, hey man, how you doing? And I immediately started answering in football terms. I told him, I'm doing all right. The scheme's starting to settle in. I'm understanding the role a little bit more. He kind of cut me off and he's like, man, not about football. Like, how are you doing? I always remember that, because that was special to me for him to ask that.
He leads by example. It's like he doesn't need to say anything, because his work is going to show on the field and people are going to step in line and follow. And that's why we've had such great receivers, because they've had such a great mentor to look up to and such a great teammate that didn't view them as a threat. He didn't view the younger guys as a threat. He viewed them as a teammate and treated them as such and brought them along as he could, as you should.
He embedded in me my confidence that each and every day you come out here, you got to be you, and don't let nobody else change you, because being you is what got you here. And I take that to the field every day.
You know what was really neat? We had him and Emmanuel were together, and they were together for so long. And then we had all these new young guys that we just drafted, Deshaun Hamilton, Cortland Sutton, and all these young players. And they were so helpful together as a team, him and Emmanuel.
If he saw the potential that was there, he wouldn't allow you to slip underneath that. Almost like an extension of the coach onto the field, because he just, like, if he saw something, he wanted to be able to help you understand how to make that better. But he also was a player to be like, hey, we got to tighten it up. We aren't where we need to be at, but we can get there.
The growth in him from the time we recruited him to the player that we saw when I went to Denver, he came out of his shell that he was in. He wasn't afraid to let his true personality show, his love for kids and people in general. And he kind of knew what he had to offer the world.
Looking back on DT, probably the greatest thing that I learned from him is his humility. He had great success as a football player, and that big friendly smile that he always had and that humble heart that he had for people was probably the greatest thing that never forget about him, and gain so much by seeing it.
Demaryius' legacy on the football field is honestly, it was built with grit. He was a person that worked extremely hard. Growing up the way he grew up, he didn't know anything but work. And that's why when he reached out to me those years earlier, it was so special to me. Here's a guy who's a first-round pick reaching back to a guy who's undrafted. But he knew I had something that he didn't have, which was information. And he was willing to get that information, but more importantly, he was willing to go apply it. And I remember when he got the big contract, and I told him, I said, they don't pay you this kind of money because you can catch a football. They pay you this kind of money because you're a leader. You're leading in the locker room. I know you don't say much, but you lead with how you play.
Thomas's time with the Broncos came to an end on October 30th, 2018. He was traded to the Houston Texans and would have to face his former team that very week in front of the fans who loved him just as much as he loved them.
Demaryius Thomas, now a Houston Texan. I watched him come out of the tunnel. Ton of photographers around. It's just bizarre to see number 87 of the Texans that used to be number 88 of the Broncos last week.
That was probably one of the saddest times of my career, I could say. Leaving Denver and then playing Denver my first game, but to see my picture on the stadium and saying thank you, you know, riding into the stadium with the Houston Texans, they be like, oh man, that's dope. And I'm like, man, that's really dope. So, you know, I appreciate it and, you know, I loved it.
Obviously, it was a crazy week for him, then coming back, flying here and playing at Mile High. And I remember pregame with his family, all of them around him, like kind of like pumping him up.
When he got traded to the Texans, I was very upset. The reason being, I'm selfish. I want him here. I want him with the Broncos. I want him to break the records that I set. I raised the bar. I wanted the bar to get raised again.
I just remember it was just weird, you know? It was just weird.
You don't want to see a guy that's been there with you for, 7 years straight. Leaving during the season is not something you want to see.
We had a conversation about it, and my coaching for him was, this is a part of the business that people don't see. And how you handle it is going to be very important. Even though you're upset, you're pissed off, you don't have to go around shouting, who said what.
It was just a matter of time, but it was very sad to see him go because he was very emotional about it. And, the Denver Broncos were his family.
This business is not for the faint of heart. Most people don't know the things you go to mentally as an athlete, professional athlete especially. Now there's a lot more attention to the mental side of what we do and how it hurts. And he was hurting from that.
At the time, I loved Denver so hard that it was like it was anger towards it. But as I sit down and think about it, it's just all love at the end of the day. And I was appreciative and so grateful just to see myself.
You may hear the crowd reacting now. Nice video tribute here for Demaryius Thomas, who took his helmet off on the Texans sideline and waved to all the fans.
Some guys go back to their old teams and the crowd give them some boos here and there, but no, it was none of that. I remember just, having those chills and, everybody kind of welcoming him with open arms.
Typical Denver crowd, loving, showing him nothing but love.
I think it kind of gave me that understanding that I already had about Broncos country, that, they're going to ride and die for the guys that ride and die for them.
I don't think I've heard the stadium that loud before, cheering on a guy coming back. The love that Broncos country had for him was so apparent.
Everybody loved DT. It was emotional to see him, but I was happy for him because he had a good game, and I look forward to him having a great end of his career.
Quick throw, DT has it, steps out of a tackle, and Demaryius Thomas is loose, 45 midfield. DT puts a move on Justin Simmons, and there's a big gain on the first reception of his Houston career.
They drew up a few plays. They wanted to get him going early, so, he had a couple screen plays early, and then he, kind of got us going that particular game. And I just remember being so excited for him, and it kind of got me going as well, on the defensive side, because I wanted to go out and do whatever I could so he can get that win here.
And every time he touched the freaking football, I'm like, that should be over here. But I was so happy for him. Just got to be honest about that.
What are some of your early thoughts on DT?
The guy just comes across as a total pro, and he's just got this aura about him. Demaryius Thomas is going to help the Houston Texans. With Will Fuller going out, this was a good deal for the Texans, and, hopefully it's good for the Broncos. It's nice when both teams win in a trade.
2nd and 10 to the end zone. He goes, and touchdown Texans, DT Demaryius Thomas.
Demaryius helped the Texans make the playoffs in 2018, but a torn Achilles prevented him from playing in the AFC wildcard game.
DT gave his all to the Denver Broncos. He gave his all to the fans. He gave his all to his teammates, whether it was an ankle or a knee or hips or shoulders. He was always dealing with something, but he was always at practice. He was always in the game. You could always depend on DT. Whenever his name was called, man, he was going to be there to make it happen.
He had tried everything to try to better his body to fight through all of these nagging injuries, because a lot of times when you're a receiver his size, guys will do anything to try to take you down. The guy tackling them that looks like, they feel it more than the
than the bigger guy, but you could tell, you know, there was a toll being taken there with some of those hits. But he just fought through it. You know, he didn't complain about it. He just showed up every day, practice and games, and fought through all the injuries. And that's just because he just wanted to be out there for his teammates.
All these players are always dealing with something. Nobody's going out on Sunday feeling 100%. These players, they always figure it out, and he was one of them as well.
Trust me, it's hard to go and play professional football at receiver when you got to run, stop, and start every single play with a banged up hip. But somehow, some way, he kept finding a way to get out there.
I remember, you know, him telling me a story where he was running routes and he goes, I literally could not stop. I would just run straight and then slow down and then turn around and come back. The defensive back going against him was like, you can't stop. And he was like, I know. Like, yeah.
A lot of injuries has come with football, but you know, it's the next man got to step up.
Teams had to respect him, you know, whether he was playing at 70%, whether he was playing at 50%. If he was on the field, teams had to respect him as a football player because he could still go out there and play at an all-pro, Pro Bowl level.
I know sometimes the fans will be, oh yeah, DT dropped this and DT dropped that, but I'm like, dude, you don't even know what this dude is playing through.
When you go through the kind of things that DT went through as a kid, one way that you're going to be able to get the attention and love that you want is by playing good. Unfortunately, you'll sacrifice your body for that.
For him to play through that stuff and take the heat publicly that he did and have guys on the other side of the ball respect him so much was one of the moments where I was like, this guy deserves so much more respect for the way he goes about his job.
He wasn't negative about it. He'd be like, all right, let's go to work. Come on, let's go put it in. Let's go get it in. Let's go put that work in. Let's try to win. He wanted to win every game and every rep, every day, and that was just the way he was.
In 2019, DT joined the New England Patriots, then was traded to the New York Jets. Thomas reunited there with former offensive coordinator Adam Gase, but was limited to just 11 games. Demaryius Thomas retired from the NFL in the summer of 2021. DT finished his career with 724 receptions for 9,763 yards and 63 touchdowns.
DT now 8 catches, 226 yards to new Denver Bronco record.
He was a 4-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time AFC champion,
Denver wins it.
and won Super Bowl 50.
And Lombardi Trophy is coming home to the Mile High City.
The impact he had on the game was indisputable.
Demaryius, his legacy on the football field, he left it all out there. Everything that he had. You know, he played through injury. He didn't always have, the best quarterback throwing to him. He still made it work.
6 straight years with over 100 catches. It was probably like 3 or 4 different quarterbacks. It just shows how good he was on the field.
I mean, Demaryius has put his stamp in the NFL.
For a period of time, he was almost unstoppable.
He definitely one of the best receivers to play this game. There was nothing he couldn't do.
You could tell his legacy on the football field was so special.
He left a mark of dominance.
I think his legacy is just like, when you need a big play, he's the guy, send it his way, throw the ball to DT. His legacy can't just be that though, because he was so much more than just a playmaker. He was a great leader.
Being one of those guys that, was help young guys and just helped anybody any way he could, in the locker room.
I've always believed that pro athletes have to be selfish to be successful. Well, DT was a perfect example of somebody who could be selfless and be successful.
He was a great teammate. I loved all the time that I had with him, and obviously watching him from afar, I realized how incredible of an impact he made on not only his teammates, but also on the broader community.
Wasn't concerned with individual achievements and accomplishments. He was all about winning and being a great teammate, and that's really what it was. Hard worker, dedicated.
He was always just talking about how he was trying to work on his game. He never took anything for granted.
Coaches always say leave it all out there, but Demaryius Thomas, he really did leave it all out there on the football field.
I do expect him to be in the Broncos Ring of Fame. You look at those names around that stadium, and all those guys represent greatness. DT, he epitomizes greatness. He's an all-time Bronco, and I look forward to seeing his name go up there.
When you retire from anything, it can be difficult, especially depending on how much effort and energy you put into it. And for him to, when he retired, it was a very somber feeling because there's no guide for how to retire.
I've just been working on myself and trying to find myself, of course, getting love from my family and friends. But the main thing is just working on self and trying to find what I'm gonna do next and, you know, building relationships where I can, you know, have people around that gonna really help me out, because it ain't easy. I ain't gonna say that. It ain't easy leaving football.
After he was contemplating retirement, he would just call out of the blue, ask for advice. What should I do? You know, sometimes he'd listen, sometimes he wouldn't, but, you know, he was always searching for the right answers, and that's what I appreciated about him.
He called me and I was just like, you gotta do something for yourself. You're retired. You do something for Demaryius Thomas. You gave and gave to everyone. And I said, it's time to take care of Demaryius, and he would always say, you're right. And he wasn't listening, and he just didn't know how.
My main thing is to give back. I never wanted to be the super famous guy, because there's a lot of people come from where I come from that don't have the opportunity. I was one of them. So that's my main thing, is just, you know, trying to find self and put out love.
I remember my last FaceTime with him, and he was happy. Same look, same smile.
I remember the last time I spoke to him, he told me, he was like, I told Bubba we gonna come out there to a game, so you get ready.
I mean, I still have a voicemail on my phone that he called and left for me. Coach Z, I'm on the road. Just wanted to see how the girls were doing. You know, tell my all said hello. Tell Miss Julia I said hello, and hope you're well. We'll catch up soon.
There were talks, you know, here and there about what was going on with him. Like, was there something that he was suffering from?
I'd known that DT had some health issues. I didn't know how severe it was.
We knew that he wasn't right. Something was going on with him.
He came to the Hall of Fame celebration in Canton. I can't tell you how much I appreciated him taking the time and the effort to come down there and celebrate with me.
The last time I saw him, I told him, I said, you know, we were at Peyton Manning's Hall of Fame celebration, and I said, hey, I want you to know I love you, and you were one of the best teammates I ever had.
I got a text from our news desk at NFL Network that was like, there is a report out of Georgia that Demaryius Thomas has passed away.
And I just kind of didn't believe it, you know, especially this day and age, you never know what's real. And then I reached out to a couple of our guys who knew, and they said, yeah, it's not looking good.
My phone, you know, just started constantly buzzing, and it was, you know, a lot of our former players from Tech asking if it was true. Some were letting me know what happened.
I just cried all day. I couldn't stop crying about it. I'm not a big crier, but like I just felt so sad, and like I internalized it a little bit, yeah, but it's like he needed help, and he just couldn't get the right kind of help, I guess.
For me, the hardest part was knowing that DT was alone, you know, like the ultimate teammate, the ultimate competitor was alone when he passed.
It breaks my heart to think that he passed that way.
The passing of DT definitely caught a lot of people off guard. No one was expecting to lose Demaryius at such a young age.
You know, hearing about his death, that hurt.
It was a horrible, horrible feeling, because you see so much promise. You know, he just retired. He's going into this world, in my world now, you know, and all that went away that quick.
3 days after his death in December of 2021, Broncos country mourned the passing of a man that had made an extraordinary impact on our community.
When I think of 88, I think of like everybody see H, but when I think of my boy, like I think of infinity, right? Like infinity. And his energy is infinity, truthfully. Like his energy still lives with me.
It was hard. It was tough. The fans show love, the organization show love, we show love. I knew I was going to wear the jersey. I wore it earlier in the year already. Yeah, it was just another opportunity to show how much love I have for him.
He meant a lot to me just in the short time that I got to know him, and I wanted so bad to find a way to like honor him in a special way.
Hearing other people's stories about how special he was, he went above and out of his way to do things for other people.
We met him a couple years ago at a draft party, and it was the best day of my life. He was so humble. He was trying to take pictures with every single person. They kept telling him, like, come on, it's time to go. And he's like, one more. That's what made me love him even more.
You can just tell and you can just feel it whenever you talk to him. You know, when we had a good conversation with him, it was just really special.
Denver right now on the field with 10 players. And the X position, which was manned so capably by Demaryius Thomas, is empty. The love for DT being expressed by Broncos faithful, and you can hear the chants of DT.
It's been a while since I played a game with a heavy heart like that, and it was different. It was different. It was hard though.
Everyone kind of felt like he was there with us. He was a part of us. He was there in the stadium for sure.
And we said, you know, as a defense before the game, it's going to be emotional, especially for the guys that got to play with him. Anytime we can get, you know, takeaways, we're going to go honor DT. So by the grace of God that I was able to get an interception, I mean feet away from the marker.
Goff play fakes the draw, throws the out cut, and it's picked off right on the sideline on a great interception and a diving effort worthy of a wide receiver. Justin Simmons, after his 5th interception of the season, went over to the number 88, obviously honoring the late Demaryius Thomas. Really nice tribute by Justin.
I'll always remember that forever, and I was really thankful for the opportunity to make a play like that because it meant a lot.
On December 9th, 2021, Demaryius Thomas was taken from us far too soon. He was only 33 years old, but the impact he had in his short time here was immeasurable. Demaryius helped make the world a better place with his love and his commitment to the cities he called home. But it's his signature smile that will never be forgotten.
He was a special human being who impacted a lot of lives. He not only made his dent in the NFL, but he made his dent in terms of, you know, what our culture should be and how we should treat one another.
For me, I'll, you know, try to honor him in everything I do.
The brotherhood, you know, you're going to always miss that. And just because he was such a special person, such a good person.
I'll honor Demaryius Thomas by just continue to do the things that he taught me, bringing love to this world and not hate.
He was available, he was durable, and a guy that, you know, will go down as one of the great all-times for the Denver Broncos.
You know, I talked about how great of a football player he was, but I'm thankful for the person that he was because it really helped put things into perspective for me.
I will never forget him, but man, I'm gonna miss his smile.
Yes, he was an NFL guy, but he just had a really good heart.
He left a mark on me and a lot of kids. They could learn how to handle their life by watching how he handled his life. I live my life better with watching how he handled his life.
I wasn't afraid for nobody to know that I was a DT fan, that I love DT. It's tough, you know, but he knew how much I loved him, man, and, you know, I miss him, I'm gonna forever miss him. And, you know, DT will always be my guy.
The friendships, like I said, the way he treated my family, that's the greatest gift that DT ever gave me, and I'll always be indebted to him for that.
DT is always going to be a pillar of a great teammate, a great professional, and a great champion.
The moment he came to the Broncos was the moment I really grew up. That's what I want him to know. I appreciate everything he did. His presence was magnificent to me. He was one of a kind, and we'll never see anybody else like him.